Hello everyone, today we are talking about Zugzwang in pawn endgames. Now, this is a very broad and general idea, and in fact, if you've already been following along with this pawn endgame series that I'm doing, and you've watched the other videos, for example, the Mind Squares video, you're already familiar with the basic idea, which is this. You're basically in a situation where you're passing away your turn and giving the opponent the turn because every legal move that they have hurts their position. That's the definition of Zugzwang, and in the context of a pawn endgame, what that basically means is that every move that your opponent could make would allow you to eventually promote and make progress in your mission of promoting one of your pawns. So to actually explain what this means, let's look at a real situation, which is this position right here. It is white to play. Now, if you notice in this situation, our main pawn that we could promote is this a6 pawn to a8, but if we're too greedy, a little bit too quick, and we go a7 here, they're going to come king to b7, and they're not only stopping our pawn, but we'll check out the situation on the other side of the board. We can never take their pawn here because they promote, so now they're going to take this pawn, then they're going to take this pawn, and then they're going to make the pleasant choice of either promoting this one or bringing their king over and promoting one of these ones. This would lose for us very quickly. So we can't push a7, but what you're also going to notice is that we can only not push a7 because of their king placement. If their king was in a different square, a7 would win, and they don't have a way to make progress because these squares are nicely defended. So if the king was to be forced to move out of this square, a7, and they're too far away to stop a8 promotion. Okay. So their king is in Zugzwang. If it was black to move and they had to move the king, we would win. Their pawn can't move, it's also in Zugzwang, so we look at these pawns here. And that brings us to the very simple option of just moving our king somewhere. We can come king to h3, for example. They can't move the king, we promote. They can't move this pawn legally, they can't move this pawn. I mean, it's probably their best option, but we'll happily take it. And again, they can't move the king, can't move the pawn. They throw away their final pawn, but after we take it, they're forced legally now to step away from the pawns, which would allow us to go a7 and a8 queen. So that's the basic idea. We give away a move doing absolutely nothing while forcing them to make a concession that would eventually be fatal. So let's look at this from a different angle. This position right here. Now, this comes from a real game. It was a very interesting game, but what you'll notice is that white got themselves a little bit stuck here. Their king has no good squares up the board. Its only option is to come back to h3. So what black did here, very genius, they played king to g2. Now, they're taking away the final square for the king, so this king cannot legally move. Same with these pawns over here, they can't legally move. White's only option is to go h3 here or move this c-pawn, but now it becomes clear white doesn't want to move this c-pawn. If white has to go c3, eventually they have to go c4, black takes and promotes, so this is exactly what black does. If they were to step away, for example, king f1, this would be a horrible mistake because the king now gets that square, the pawns now get the square, white untangles and ends up winning the game. What black does is they play king to h2, keeping everything closed. The king still can't move. Same with the pawns. c3 is forced. Now king g2. Again, no piece can move aside from the c-pawn. c4 is legally forced. White's hands were tied, and after black takes, it's very clear that they are promoting first. I mean, white is actually promoting right after, but that's irrelevant because queen to e1 is checkmate. So, very similar idea. You're basically wasting moves. As black, they're not doing anything special. They're just shuffling their king. But that makes all the difference because you're forcing your opponent to make a bad move. Let's look at a final example, which is very similar in nature to the ones that we just saw, but just to hammer home this concept. In this position, black played h5, which is very smart, taking away this pawn's ability to move up the board. And now white is lacking squares. They can go f5. But after the king moves, again, they're lacking moves here. For example, if they push this pawn, we take, we get rid of all the pawns here. That doesn't help white. This pawn majority is going to be able to independently win. And so, for example, after king to b1, they could trade into this situation here. Now, let's take a moment to understand what's going on here. Can this king stop both of these pawns? Well, that depends. While the king is on c1, yes. If you go b2, we take. If you go d2, we take. And in both cases, we are fast enough to return for the other pawn. So while the king is here, everything seems to be okay. But then you realize if the king is on any other square, white will lose. And so what black does is they just wait around doing absolutely nothing. And eventually, if we move the king again, we are losing. So we push away our pawn, we push the other pawn, we're now forced, we're in Zugzwang, we have to move the king, and black wins because they can't come closer to this pawn, and it's promoting and winning. So, very simple concept, but very useful one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new around here, like this video if you learned something new from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.